After 3 years of heartbreak, she discovered an inspiring love when a Mafia boss gave her his ring. Sarah held the chipped coffee pot tightly, pouring a steady stream into an oversized mug. The diner buzzed with conversations, yet her world felt achingly quiet since the day her marriage fell apart. 3 years of love reduced to dashed hopes and mounting bills, as bleak as the Midwestern skies outside. She often wondered if happiness was a luxury she could no longer afford. But today was different. As the doors swung open, a chill swept through the diner, announcing Marco, tall, dark, and undoubtedly dangerous. Clad in black leather and shadows, he was a specter of the life she'd been warned against. Yet, when their eyes met, something sparked between them. It was a silent understanding, an invisible thread weaving through the chaos of their lives. Their connection blossomed slowly amidst greasy fries and clattering dishes. As Sarah deftly maneuvered plates to tables, Marco became a regular, always taking the corner booth, buried in darkness and intrigue. Slowly they began to talk. At first it was small whispers, how his family struggled like hers, how poverty gnawed at their communities, binding them in shared sorrow. A faint smile played on her lips as she discovered not the monster in him, but a man simply trying to survive. But he wasn't just his gang affiliations that drew her in. It was the flicker of vulnerability breaking through his brooding exterior. In those late-night conversations, the diner secluded around them, Marco unfolded stories of his childhood, marred by betrayal and the weight of family expectations. Sarah felt her heart pound against her ribcage, every word he spoke chipping away at her fear. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their laughter became a lifeline against fading hopes, and when he needed solace, the booth felt like a sanctuary from the world's judgment. Yet even in their bubble of warmth, the whispers of their families grew louder, dangerous, disgraceful. As their bond deepened, so did the turmoil around them. One night, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the diner, their worlds collided spectacularly. As Marco leaned closer, you could feel the heat of their barely contained longing crackle in the air. Suddenly, the diner door swung open, and angry voices invaded their sacred space. They were met with hostility, prejudice enveloping them, thrusting doubt into Sarah's heart. Just as Marco reached for her, ready to shield her from the chaos, it became clear. Their love, though genuine, was a battleground. As the diner hushed with eyes on them, the truth loomed heavy. Was their love powerful enough to topple the chains of kinship and fear? And as the storm settled and the silence amplified, Sarah felt the weight of that question like never before. Marco too was on edge, haunted by the ghosts of his past that threatened to tear them apart. Would they find the strength to stand together? Or would the forces against them prove insurmountable? The air crackled with uncertainty, as Sarah held on to hope, knowing the next chapter would define them all. The diner was still, as if holding its breath. Marco stood at the entrance, tension radiating from him. The angry voices faded into an uncomfortable silence. Eyes from every booth turned towards them like spectators at a fragile moment. Sarah's heart raced, uncertain whether to feel fear or bravado. It was the latter that pushed her to take a step toward Marco. "Let us get out of here," he said, his voice low but laced with urgency. "What about now, Sarah?" His insistence pulled at the threads of her fear, urging her to follow him. They slipped outside, the biting cold air hitting her face like a splash of ice water. She shivered but felt alive. Marco grasped her hand firmly, intertwining his fingers with hers as they hurried down the cracked pavement. She could feel the weight of those judgmental stares still burning at her back. Yet in Marco's presence the cold dimmed. "Are you okay?" she asked, breathless. "Yeah," he replied, glancing over his shoulder. "But they won't let this go easily." "What do you mean?" Panic laced her voice. "See, there are things in my world that don't just disappear, Sarah." He stopped, turning fully to face her, his deep brown eyes piercing right through her facade. "You saved me from that place tonight, and I need to return the favor." "Return the favor?" "I barely know what's happening," she admitted, feeling more lost than ever. Marco's thumb gently brushed her knuckles, the intimacy of the gesture grounding her amidst the storm of confusion. I'm not a good person. I'm not what you think I am. But for the first time in years I want to be. And that starts with you. Their connection, intense and electric, ignited a flicker of hope in her heart, battling the darkness of her past. But it also sent a wave of doubt crashing over her. Grounded in the stark reality of his life, she felt vulnerable. What if he wasn't what she imagined? What if she was falling for a dangerous man pushing her toward a path she wasn't prepared to tackle? Does this mean she hesitated, searching his gaze for clarity? Does this mean we're a thing? What does that look like? His mouth quirked into a half-smile, but the concern shadowed his face. It means us against the world. But it won't be easy. I can't promise you safety. I wish I could. The words hung heavy between them, soaked in the weight of his reality. Would she be willing to step into his world, the world that had brought him so much pain? The thought sent chills down her spine, but at the same time there was a pulse of excitement. This was the kind of risk that brought her out of the shadows, a chance she had not dared to take in years. How do we do that? She finally asked, inching closer to him, needing that warmth. By trusting each other, by not letting fear control us. I'll fight for you, for us. But we have to be ready for the battle. Just then, a muffled roar echoed from the distance. Sarah's heart sank at the sound. Tension flared in the pit of her stomach. Let us go back. She pulled back, anxiety pushing her away. No, Marco said, determination blazing in his eyes. They can't take you from me. I won't let that happen. With every ounce of courage, he placed his hands on her shoulders, grounding her. As he leaned closer, uncertainty filled the air between them, electrifying yet terrifying. Will you face this with me? Marco whispered, his breath warm against her cheek. Sarah took a breath, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. Would she step into his world and all its complications? Would she dare to believe in this profound yet volatile connection? The future loomed ahead, hazy and daunting, but one thing was clear. Everything was about to change. I will, she replied, her heart swelling with newfound resolve. But we have to be careful. As they began to walk forward, determination replacing hesitation, Sarah felt something awaken within her, an urgency to fight for a love that could defy the odds. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of the battle ahead. And as they rounded the corner, the shadows of their truths crept ever closer, entwining around them like a dark cloak. What awaited them next would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and sacrifice. The streetlights flickered as Sarah and Marco moved deeper into the night, the hum of the city alive around them. They walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. But as they rounded a corner, the shadows seemed to twist unnaturally, and Sarah could feel the weight of danger creeping closer. The muffled roar from earlier ignited again, a reminder that chaos was never far away. Where are we going? She finally asked, focusing on Marco's face. His expression was tense, brows knitted together as if he were mapping out the danger ahead. To a safe place, he said, his grip tightening around her hand. Promise you'll be okay. But anxiety bled into her veins. The world they had just fled was still so fresh in her mind. As the breath of the city wrapped around them, she could feel the old hesitations clawing at her, battling against the warmth of his reassurance. Do you really think they'll come after us? Her voice dropped to a whisper, torn between disbelief and the undeniable truth of his reality. Marco stopped and turned to face her fully. This isn't just about us anymore. I made a choice tonight, and choices have consequences. I refuse to let them take control of my life again. That includes you. His resolve sent a rush of emotions through her. The bravery radiating off him was intoxicating. Yet the fear of what lay ahead loomed like a thunderstorm. What if I can't handle this? What if I don't understand your world, Marco? His face softened slightly, the fierce mask slipping for a moment. You're stronger than you think. I've seen it. You walked straight into that diner and stood up for me without even knowing the stakes. His gaze locked onto hers. That was courageous. Flashes of that moment flickered through her mind, standing up against the crowd, feeling adrenaline pulse through her veins. It had felt so right, so powerful. Courage, she echoed quietly. But what if that courage leads to something I can't escape from? Marco sighed, stepping back until their bodies were barely a breath apart again. What we have is different. It's worth fighting for. Trust me, Sarah. The sheer intensity of his eyes held her steady, battling her fears with a daring promise. This was all new terrain for her. The more he spoke, the more she felt the boundaries of her old life crumbling, a fragile wall she'd been rebuilding for years now threatening to collapse. Before she could answer, a figure emerged from the shadows ahead, dark and ominous. As they drew closer, Sarah's heart raced again, and she instinctively stepped back, her hand slipping from Marco's grip. He clenched his jaw, preparing himself. "Stay behind me," he instructed, holding his ground as the figure drew nearer. Sarah's heart stopped. The silhouette resembled a specter from Marco's past, dressed in dark leather with a confident stride and an aura that disturbed the air around them. She took a deep breath, caught between dread and the overwhelming need to fight for the man before her. "Marco," the figure called, voice dripping with menace. It was a tone steeped in familiarity and intimidation, sending chills down Sarah's spine. Rico. Marco's voice was low, steady but laced with an anger that cut through the night. "What do you want?" The newcomer smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Looks like you found yourself a new plaything. How sweet. Leave her out of this. You're not welcome here." The energy crackled between them, palpable and electric. Sarah felt the urge to intervene, but part of her wanted to cry out, to give in to fear. "Let us see how far that courage of yours really goes," Rico taunted, taking a step closer. With tension thick in the air, Marco turned to Sarah, urgency flashing in his eyes. "Get to safety. Now." But as she took a step back, caught between instinct and loyalty, she knew they were no longer just fighting for love. They were standing at the very edge of a battle that would determine their fates. How far would they go to protect what they had begun to build together? And would their courage be enough to face the darkness closing in around them? She stood trembling, the weight of that question hung in the air like a loaded gun. "Step away from her, Rico," Marco warned, his voice as steady as a rock. Every word was heavy with defiance, but Sarah could see the tension rippling through him, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Rico laughed, the sound grating and chilling. "You're still drawing lines in the sand. Didn't you learn anything when you tried to escape our world?" His dark eyes glinted in the dim light, a predator toying with its prey. "You think you can just walk away?" Marco took a step forward, unfazed. "This isn't about running away. It's about fighting for something real." Those words struck Sarah like a lightning bolt. There was a fire in Marco, one she had never noticed before, a passion that lit up the dark moments around them. But surrounding that fire was peril, and she felt the heat of it slapping against her skin. "Real?" Rico scoffed. "What you have this fleeting moment doesn't stand a chance against the past." I can see it in her eyes. She's afraid. Marco's gaze flickered to Sarah. She could see the raw emotion in his eyes. "You can't let him do this to us," he urged, stepping closer again. "You're stronger than your fear." His words wrapped around her like a lifeline. Fear and resolve battled within her, urgency pricking at her senses. "I don't want to be scared anymore," she declared, her own voice surprisingly bold. "You don't own me, Rico." Rico's smile faltered, just for a second, but it was enough to embolden Marco. "That's what I'm talking about," he encouraged her, refusing to back down. "We can overcome this." Just as Sarah felt a surge of hope, Rico's expression turned dangerous. "This isn't over, Marco," he hissed, his voice lowering into a menacing rasp. He took a step back, holding Marco's gaze for a fleeting second that felt like an eternity. "You'll regret this decision. You both of you are just pawns in a game far larger than you realize." With that, he turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving behind an echo of tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. Sarah exhaled sharply, her heart racing as the silence enveloped them. What did he mean? A game? Marco shook his head, slumping slightly as the adrenaline began to ebb. Just what he does. He tries to intimidate, to weaken. That felt real, Marco. Her voice trembled and she took a step closer. What if he's right? What if we're not as strong as we think? Marco's expression softened, a mix of concern and determination washing over him. We have to be. There's no other choice. I want to go back to that life, not without a fight. And I want to let him take you either. But doubt not at Sarah's insides. The moment they faced Rico felt like a mere taste of what they'd have to confront. What if this leads us into something we can't control? She searched his eyes, pleading for reassurance. His grip tightened on her hands once more, the warmth of his touch igniting a spark within her, a reminder of what they fought for. "No matter what happens, I'm here," he whispered. "We're in this together." As the gravity of his promise sank in, Sarah caught sight of the flashing lights in the distance, sirens cutting through the stillness of the night. The battle had just begun, and a wave of uncertainty washed over her. "Do you think they'll come for us?" she asked, the worry prickling at her skin once more. Marco's brow furrowed. "They might try, but we can't let fear dictate our next move." He looked past her as if trying to glimpse their future, and for the first time, she noticed the fierce determination etched onto his features, a beacon of defiance lighting the path ahead. Suddenly, Sarah felt a flicker of a different kind of courage ignite within her. Maybe this was the moment they fought back against their fears. But as she opened her mouth to suggest a plan, a distant shout echoed through the alley, and her heart sank again. Would the overwhelming tide of chaos sweep them away before they had a chance to stand firm against it? The night was far from over, and their fight was just beginning. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed off the brick walls, and the shadows around them seemed to deepen. Sarah peeked around Marco, trying to catch a glimpse of the approaching figures. Her heart drummed loudly in her chest, fear and adrenaline coursing through her veins. Marco's grip tightened on her hand, a silent promise that he wouldn't let go. "Stay close," he murmured, his voice steady despite the chaos bubbling just beneath the surface. They pressed themselves against the wall, breaths shallow, as the footsteps drew closer. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The thought of engaging with whoever was coming sent a jolt of anxiety through her. She could almost feel the weight of Rico's threat wrapping around them like a vice. Marco's eyes darted back and forth, weighing their options. "If we can find a way out before they get here," he trailed off, assessing their surroundings. They peered down the dark alley on their left. It was tight, cluttered with crates and garbage bags, but it extended to another street. "That way," she pointed, and he nodded in agreement. They slipped into the shadows, their bodies low as they moved cautiously, instincts sharpened. The adrenaline tasted metallic on her tongue, but she pushed through the fear. Marco was right. There was no time for second-guessing. As they reached the other end of the alley, the sounds of raised voices grew clearer. "It's too risky to let them roam free," one voice said, firm and unwavering. "We can't let them get away." "Did you see them?" "That guy is trouble," another voice chimed in, filled with disdain. Marco paused, glancing back at her with a tightening jaw. "We have to be careful. They're watching." Sarah's heart sank. They weren't just running from Rico. The stakes were higher than she had realized. She looked back at the fading sounds, terror rising within her. What if they were caught? A chill trickled down her spine, darkness mixed with the anxiety of what this all meant. "Stay close," Marco repeated, pulling her along as they made a sharp turn onto another street. It was quieter here. The glow from a nearby street lamp illuminated a small park ahead, a stark contrast to the chaotic world they had just left behind. Relief washed over her momentarily, but she could still hear the echoes of danger pounding in her ears. "Should we stop?" she asked, her breath shaky as they paused to gather their wits. Marco nodded, his chest heaving in the cool night air. "Just for a minute. We need to think." As they leaned against a wooden bench, she studied his face. The determination etched in his features was captivating and reassuring. This was a man who wouldn't back down. But beneath that strength, she caught glimpses of the fear he was trying to mask. It mirrored her own. "What if we can't outrun this?" she said softly. Just the thought made her stomach flip. He turned toward her, a fire sparking in his eyes. "We will. But we need a plan." For a moment they stood there, the silence wrapping around them. Then Marco took a deep breath, breaking the quiet. "We can't keep running. We need to confront Rico and whoever else is involved in this game. It's the only way to take back our freedom." His words hung in the air. Freedom. Such a heavy word, loaded with possibility. "Together?" she asked hesitantly, her heart racing at the thought of facing the fire head-on. "Together," he affirmed, a hint of a smile flickering across his lips. But just as hope began to bloom, a flash of headlights filled the park, illuminating their faces. The light came from a vehicle screeching around the corner, and her heart plummeted. Marco, she whispered, fear threading through her voice. The car came to a halt, doors flinging open. Shadows poured out, moving with purpose. Sarah's pulse quickened as she clung to Marco's arm, hiding behind his strong frame. Time's up, she breathed, dread consuming her. Would they find their escape? Or was this the moment everything slipped away? The night was about to unveil its cruelest twist. Two figures emerged from the car, silhouetted against the harsh glow of the headlights. The shadows stretched and twisted as they approached, revealing rugged faces marked by a life of violence. Sarah's instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground. Marco's hold tightened around her waist, pulling her back into his chest. What do we do? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, panic clawing at her throat. Stay calm, Marco replied, his voice low and steady, his gaze fixed on the newcomers, calculating every movement. We wait for the right moment. The taller man, with a rough stubble and an air of authority, scanned the area, his eyes glinting in the darkness. Split up. They can't be far. Sarah's breath hitched as the other figure nodded and moved toward the park entrance, the direction they'd come from. Time stretched, fear wrapping tight around her chest like a noose. Where's the backup? The tall man barked, frustration lacing his tone. Anxiety twisted in her gut as he paced just a few feet away. It was a mistake to linger here. They needed a plan fast. Marco, she whispered, desperate. We can't stay. We have to move. Just give me a second, he hissed back, never taking his eyes off the men. I need to see where they go. The park's silence felt deafening as the tension escalated. Seconds felt like hours. She watched as the second man stopped and glanced around, a sense of alertness emanating from him. Her heart raced faster. Now, Marco, she urged, pulling at his arm, urgency taking over. He hesitated for a heartbeat, and then with a determined nod, they slipped into the shadows of a thick hedge bordering the park. They pressed their bodies against the cool, damp earth, the thrill of hiding igniting both fear and excitement. They held their breaths, almost drowning in the quiet, as the tall man loomed ever closer. This way, he shouted, turning sharply and heading down the path. Go, Marco coaxed, a fierce whisper that sent adrenaline barreling through her veins. They bolted across the park, hearts aligning in a frantic rhythm, narrowly avoiding the beams of light from the remaining figure's flashlight. They burst from the park and onto the street, palpitations echoing in their ears, gasping for air and freedom. Where now? Sarah asked, fear merging with hope. There, Marco pointed to a narrow side street, partially concealed by an overgrown fence. They darted down the path, the shadows swallowing them whole once more. The indistinct sounds of their pursuers faded into the background. They stumbled into a secluded alley, littered with old boxes and fading posters. Okay, just breathe, Marco panted, leaning against the cold brick wall. Sarah steadied herself, nodding, but her thoughts raced ahead, grappling with the million questions swirling in her mind. They had escaped the immediate danger, but how long could they keep this up? What if they come back? She blurted out, her voice trembling. Marco's expression hardened. They will, he replied, his eyes narrowing as he contemplated their next move. We need to find a way to turn the tables on Rico. We can't let them have the upper hand. But how? We don't have any resources, she argued, doubt creeping into her mind. Marco stepped closer, his gaze steady, igniting a flicker of belief within her. We do have something. We have each other. And we're not going down without a fight. Holding on to his words, Sarah felt the flutter of hope in her heart. They were two against the world, but together they could forge a new path. The danger was real, but so was their strength. As they stood in silence plotting their next steps, the sound of distant sirens echoed from the main road, a stark reminder of the chaos spiraling around them. What if they get to Rico first? Sarah whispered. Marco's face darkened with resolve. Then we move. We'll reach him before they do, and we'll find a way to make him pay. He vowed, fire burning in his tone. And then came a voice from behind them, laced with menace. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Their hearts dropped as they turned to face the looming threat. Could they really escape this time, or was it already too late? The figure stepped out of the shadows, a smirk dancing on his lips that sent a cold shiver down Sarah's spine. Dressed in dark clothing, he looked like the embodiment of danger, each step he took radiating a chilling confidence. Marco tensed beside her, shoulders squared, ready to confront whatever came next. Who are you? Marco shot back, a defiance burning in his eyes. The man laughed, a low, menacing sound that echoed off the damp alley walls. You really shouldn't be here, lovebirds. You're in over your heads. He leaned closer, eyes gleaming with mischief. Rico won't be pleased to find you messing around in his territory. Panic surged in Sarah's chest. They were cornered. We're not here to cause trouble, she stammered, but even as she spoke, fear churned in her gut. Oh, but that's just it. You already have. The man folded his arms, looking amused. You've become quite the nuisance to him, and when someone is a nuisance, well, things can get messy. Marco glanced around, searching for an escape route, but the alley seemed to close in on them. Walls lined with faded graffiti that whispered tales of desperation. Where's Rico? He demanded, trying to hold on to the thread of control. Patience. He's got a special interest in you too. The man stepped back, cocking his head as if watching a performance unfold. And trust me, you won't like the finale. Sarah felt her heart thud against her ribcage. She couldn't let fear take over. What do you want? She asked, her voice stronger now, trying to mask the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. Just a little information, he replied, leaning casually against the wall like they were old friends. Rico's been looking for someone with a certain set of skills. Skills? Marco echoed, furrowing his brow. What kind of skills? Very lucrative ones, I'd say. He leaned in closer, his smile widening. But I doubt you'd be interested in playing Rico's game. Before they could answer, footsteps echoed from the mouth of the alley, growing louder, sending a rush of dread through Sarah. The man straightened, his smile fading into a more serious expression. And here comes the man of the hour. I'd recommend putting on your best faces, kids. It's showtime. From the shadows emerged Rico, flanked by his men, the dim light casting an imposing silhouette around him. The crowd of hardened men parted like a sea, revealing the man who had haunted their every thought since the night everything changed. Rico's expression was calm, but his eyes burned with intensity. Marco instinctively moved in front of Sarah, a protective gesture that made her heart swell, even in the face of danger. You need to back off, Rico, he warned, a growl surfacing in his voice. We're not afraid of you. Rico chuckled softly, a sound so cold it sent chills racing up Sarah's spine. Not afraid. You should be, boy. His gaze settled on Sarah, piercing and intense. You've taken quite the interest in my business lately. Not by choice, she fired back, her determination reigniting. We didn't ask for any of this. True, Rico conceded, stepping closer. But that doesn't matter. You're here now, and I have plans for you both. We could do great things together. His eyes flickered with something dark, temptation mixed with menace. Uncertainty flooded Sarah's thoughts. And if we refuse? Rico leaned back slightly, as if weighing their words. The air grew heavy with tension, and Marco's body stiffened next to her, ready to retaliate at a moment's notice. This wasn't just a negotiation. It was a battle for survival. Then I can assure you, Rico said slowly, giving a cold, calculating smile, things will get very bad for you both. Fear gripped Sarah's heart, but she refused to back down. It felt as if everything they had been through had led to this moment. She had to believe that together they could find a way to escape or turn this around. As the confrontation reverberated in the air, a desperate plan began to unfurl in her mind. Could they outsmart Rico? Could they turn the tables this time? With the stakes raised higher than ever, everything felt like it hung in the balance. As the gaze of the mob boss bore into her, Sarah realized this was just the beginning. Whatever came next would determine their fate once and for all. With a trembling breath, she turned to Marco, determination glimmering in her eyes. We have to fight back. But in that moment, as Rico's men shifted, a sudden thought struck her. What if they didn't just want to escape but could find a way to exploit Rico's plans? It was a risky gamble, but what choice did they have? And as the tension peaked, a gunshot echoed through the alley. The deafening crack of the gunshot seemed to hang in the air, the world around them momentarily frozen in the chaos of sound. Instinctively, Sarah flinched, her heart racing, and Marco stepped even closer, practically shielding her with his body. The alley, once a suffocating prison, now pulsed with a terrifying energy fueled by uncertainty. Stay down, Marco yelled, eyes darting toward the shadows, looking for the source of the gunfire. Panic twisted in Sarah's stomach, but she forced herself to breathe, searching for clarity amid the panic. Is it aimed at us? She whispered, confusion playing at the edges of her mind. She had expected a confrontation, but this escalation was nothing they could have planned for. No, Marco replied, lowering his voice while scanning the crowd. Just stay behind me. Rico's men had tensed, a few reaching for their weapons, but Rico simply raised a hand, his authority slicing through the charged atmosphere. Relax, he shouted, annoyance creeping into his voice. That wasn't he intended for you. The tension did not dissipate. Instead, it shifted, the focus changing as the figure that had pulled the trigger out in the darkness stepped forward. Another man, tall and muscular, with an ominous presence that was just as unsettling as Rico's. Lurking in the shadows, he appeared unfazed by the chaos he'd just caused. Sarah's heart sank. She could feel a deep-seated dread crawling up her spine. I was just wanting a little fun, the man smirked, his eyes sparkling with malice, a stark contrast to the seriousness of the situation. Rico's expression hardened, the laughter fading. Speak less, move more, Rico snapped, his tone dangerous. The new man shrugged but stepped back, tension building again with his absence. Sarah looked at Marco, who met her gaze, and she could see the determination settle across his face even as fear flickered behind his eyes. Let us not keep the kids scared, Rico said, approaching them slowly, his demeanor calm yet predatory. You may think you're clever, but running away from this situation isn't as simple as it looks. There are ways of playing the game you haven't yet even considered. Sarah pressed her lips together, her mind racing. Could they actually manipulate the situation, turn the tables on Rico? What kind of game? She asked, her voice steady despite the shaking inside. Rico raised an eyebrow, a mix of intrigue and mockery. It's a game of trust and power. You two are at a crossroads. You see, it's not just about escaping. It's about making choices that will shape your future. Marco straightened, determination radiating off him. And what if we refuse to play? Rico's smile returned, but this one felt colder, more dangerous. Then you'll find out how unforgiving life can be, when you have someone like me watching over you. Sarah felt the weight of Rico's words press down on her like a suffocating blanket. But within that weight, something else flickered, a spark of rebellion. Maybe we don't want your help, Rico. Maybe we'll find our own way. Rico paused, studying her as if weighing the depth of her resolve. For the briefest moment, silence filled the alley, and something shifted in the air. A challenge passed between them. She might have just declared war. Before she could breathe, Rico leaned in, closing the gap between them. Then let us see how you intend to play this game, Sarah. I'd hate to see you fall short of your potential. The threat lingered in his words, but behind it lay a promise nothing was set in stone. A mixture of fear and adrenaline coursed through her veins as she exchanged glances with Marco. They were in this together. Fight or flight, huh? Marco whispered, breaking the tense silence. What's it going to be? Sarah's heart raced, clarity creeping in. Fight, she said. Her voice barely a whisper but filled with conviction. As they stared down Rico, the stakes felt higher than ever. But there was a flicker of hope, a chance to take control, to exploit the very situation Rico had tried to impose on them. And just as she felt the air shift again, a loud crash echoed from behind them, drawing all attention. Sarah turned her head just in time to see chaos unfold as another group of men burst in from the street, combat ready, shifting the balance of power yet again. What colossal twist awaited them now? This was far from over. The sound of heavy boots thundered against the pavement, matching the frantic beat of Sarah's heart. She turned, her breath caught in her throat as she faced the intruding group. 6 men, all clad in black, barreled into the alley with an undeniable air of purpose, their presence shifting the already volatile dynamic. Who are they? Sarah whispered, her voice shaking slightly as fear clawed at her insides. Not sure, Marco replied, stepping protectively in front of her, eyes narrowed with focus. The newcomers didn't look like Rico's men. They had an edge, a raw intensity that sent a jolt of alarm through the already charged atmosphere. Back away, this is our turf, Rico shouted, his bravado faltering for a moment. The men who had just entered didn't flinch at his warning. Instead, their leader, a tall figure with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward, a sly smile creeping onto his face. "Looks like we've interrupted a party," he said, his voice smooth and low. There was a sense of authority in his tone that instantly captivated the crowd, drawing their gaze. "What do you want?" Rico fired back, appraising the group with growing irritation. The man chuckled, as if finding Rico's question amusing. "Oh, just an opportunity. But we're not here to deal with you. We're here for the kids." Panic surged through Sarah, the word kids echoing in her mind like a warning bell. They had become the unwanted targets in this power struggle, and that realization sank like a stone in her belly. She glanced at Marco, whose expression was a mixture of anger and defensive readiness. "What do you mean?" Marco demanded, his voice gruff. "We haven't done anything to you. Maybe not to us. But the game you're playing could end up costing a lot more than you think." The tension escalated as the other men positioned themselves, creating a barrier between Rico and the intruders. Sarah could feel the adrenaline flooding back, igniting her nerves. "This isn't your fight," she yelled, finding her voice among the chaos. "We don't have anything to do with your plans." The leader turned, giving her an appreciative look that momentarily surprised her. "Oh, but you do." Rico held you both in his grasp, "but the truth is always lurking, isn't it? You've been part of a game you didn't even know you were playing." Marco shot her a glance. The flicker of confusion in his eyes mirrored her own. What did this man mean? Sarah swallowed hard, awareness dawning that maybe Rico wasn't the only threat. There was something deeper at play, a darkness underlying everything. "Why don't you step aside, Rico?" the man said smoothly. "Let the kids make their choice without you breathing down their necks." Rico sneered, but his bravado wavered. "You think you can just take them?" "Not take," the leader corrected with a languid smile. "Allow them to choose. After all, in this game, choice is the only power they really have." An electric silence enveloped the alley as everyone waited for Rico's response. Sarah felt the weight of the decision press down on her. Would they surrender to fear or seize this chance to take control? "I'm not afraid of you," Sarah said, her voice stronger than before. "And nobody is taking us anywhere." The leader's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed to glint in the dim light. "Brave words, girl. Just remember, choices can come with consequences you didn't expect." As he glanced back at his men, Sarah sensed the charged air grow thick with foreboding. The idea of choosing between Rico and this new faction loomed over them like a storm cloud, darkness tangled with uncertainty. "Marco," she breathed, looking into his eyes. Their shared determination ignited a flicker of hope amid the chaos. They would figure this out together. Just as Sarah gathered her courage, Rico unleashed an oath laden with venom, interrupting the moment. "You'll regret this. No one plays games with me and gets away with it." Before she could respond, a deafening crash echoed from the far end of the alley, sending a tremor through the ground. The scene spiraled into complete chaos as cars screeched to a halt, brimming with unfamiliar faces. What was about to happen next? With the sky darkening overhead and a storm brewing, Sarah's heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. The once clear path had splintered into a tangled web of danger and survival. Could they truly outmaneuver all this and take back control? The alley was a cacophony of noise, loud shouts, screeching tires, and the pulse of chaos encroaching from all sides. Sarah felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins as she gripped Marco's arm tighter. This was no ordinary showdown. Choices were being made in real time, and every decision could bind their fates forever. "Marco, what do we do?" she breathed, her heart pounding like a drum. The urgency radiated from him as he scanned their surroundings. "We have to stay together. If we get separated, we're done for. Our best shot is to outsmart them." He directed a fierce gaze at the group of men surrounding them, a mixture of resolve and defiance. The tension in the alley thickened. This was a battle for their lives, and they had to be strategic. Before they could act, Rico stepped forward. "You're not leaving here without a choice. You think you can just walk away?" His tone was laced with menace. But just as the words left his lips, the mysterious leader with the scar stepped closer, positioning himself between Rico and Sarah. "Actually, I think they can. You overestimate your hold on them." The shift was palpable in the air. Sarah watched as the gaze of the two men locked onto each other, a dangerous dance of power. "You're just trying to play them against me," Rico spat, anger leaking into his voice. Show of hands, Rico, the leader countered, a grin creeping across his face. It's a choice between you and freedom, isn't it? Let us see if they want to keep their heads in the dark or finally step into the light. Feeling the weight of their gazes, Sarah squared her shoulders, instinctively leaning into Marco's strength. She took a step forward. We know. Marco interrupted, his voice a warning. Don't let him bait you. But Rico's eyes flashed as he seized the moment. You want to keep pretending there are no stakes here? Think again. I offer a life of power. You'll never find that with him. He motioned to the scarred leader, his voice slithering with persuasion. Maybe that's a life we don't want, Sarah interjected, her voice steady. We've been using survival as our reason for playing it safe. But what if this is our chance to reshape our narrative? Bold words for someone cornered, Rico retorted, his expression darkening. But the intensity of Sarah's gaze never wavered. The scarred leader crossed his arms, seemingly intrigued. You see? She's got fire. That's why I'm here. He directed his attention to Sarah. What I'm offering isn't just a chance to escape from Rico. It's the opportunity to join something greater, a network that isn't bound by fear. A path to true power if you're wise enough to seize it. A flicker of curiosity ignited in Sarah's heart. This world felt dark, yet the concept of wielding power was intoxicating. But with it came the risk of becoming what she despised. What do I know about your world? Sarah pressed, uncertainty threading through her voice. You'll learn. We'll teach you, the leader replied smoothly, the confidence radiating from him. In this game, knowledge is the best weapon. Marco, she said, her heart swaying. This could be a way out, an escape from the chaos. No, Marco was firm, shaking his head. And what if it's just another trap? You don't know what they really want. Are you willing to stay trapped under Rico's thumb forever? She countered, desperation creeping in. She could feel the pull of this choice. This wasn't just survival but empowerment. Rico scoffed, stepping closer, his voice drooping with suggestion. This man wants to use you, Sarah. I understand this world. I know how to keep you safe. But Sarah had had enough. And what about love, Rico? It's not just about survival. It's about finding purpose, fighting for each other. Love? Get real. This is about strength. He waved a dismissive hand, but the flicker of doubt she saw in his eyes sparked within her. Sarah turned back to Marco. What do you say? Is it time we take control? He hesitated, fear simmering beneath the surface. This world is dangerous, I can't lose you to this. Together we're strong, Marco, she reminded him, every ounce of her heart pouring into her words. We can outsmart the darkness. We can forge our own fate. Fate, huh? The leader was watching them, amusement dancing on his face. Well then, the choice is yours. Who do you want to follow? Join Rico and live under a shadow, or take the chance with me? Every heartbeat felt like an eternity as Sarah locked eyes with Marco. They were at a crossroads, a moment of clarity sharpening her resolve. Together, she declared. We choose to fight. Marco moved beside her, a flicker of determination igniting in his gaze. We find a way to turn this around. Rico's face twisted in disbelief. The mob boss was not prepared for their defiance. The scarred leader leaned back slightly, impressed. Then let the real game begin. And just like that, their journey from heartbreak gave way to strength. Sarah and Marco were no longer victims. They had taken a stand, ready to fight their way toward a life they had no idea they could claim, filled with uncertainty yet dripping with potential. As they prepared to navigate this twisted world of shadows and choices, a sense of hope surged within them, illuminating the darkness. And that newfound light? It was everything. Let us do this, Marco said, firm and resolute as they turned to face whatever came next together. And in that moment, they understood the heart of their story wasn't merely about survival against overwhelming odds. It was about rising, reclaiming love in the most defiant of ways. Join us in the fight. Now is the moment you need to make your mark. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand how vital your support is in this journey.